I have already gotten a few comments asking me desperately, please do not change the color of this car to the bright neon orange. After all, it translates directly to the black car or something like that. But of course, you know me, I had to change the color of the Bugatti Voiture Noire to my bright neon orange. Personally, I think it looks pretty good this way. But anyway, yes, this is the Bugatti Voiture Noire, and you can obtain it right now through the Black Friday event in the Burst of Speed packs. And when I found out this car was included in the first set of packs, that was the first thing I did when the update dropped. So on my birthday during a live stream, I just smashed out all of my tokens and unlocked this at full max rank. So I'm really excited to give it a shot in multiplayer, and of course this is my review video, so you'll get all the stats and all the information you need to know about this car. Before we get into the details though, I do want to remind you guys, in the description down below I have some links to my social media channels, including my Discord if you want to hang out and chat, as well as my Instagram for some cool car photography. So let's get back to the Voiture Noire. So as the title would suggest, I have been waiting over 5 years, or actually I think it's exactly 5 years since the Full Throttle update back in 2020, and I have always fell in love with the design of this car ever since it was announced. I really wanted it in this game, but unfortunately, not only was the drive syndicate for this car absolutely impossible to obtain without spending loads of money, it was a key car on top of that. So whenever the car came back around, you would need to max it out in order to unlock it. And quite frankly, for most of the times it came back around, it just wasn't quite worth it because I needed to prioritize some other cars. This time around, however, I had over 120,000 tokens in my bank, and I figured why the heck not? It should be about time. There wasn't any other car really during this update that I felt was better than this car. And like I've been saying for many years now in Asphalt, I always tend to prioritize unlocking cars that I have a personal attachment to rather than going for cars that are just purely performance based. Yes, it's nice to have a really good car in the garage, and it can definitely be useful for things like events and multiplayer, but at the end of the day, I want to look at my garage and feel satisfied knowing that these cars are ones that I picked out due to maybe an emotional attachment or maybe nostalgia. And so when I fell in love with this car's design, I knew that I had to unlock it someday in Asphalt. So when the Burst of Speed was announced, I knew exactly what I had to do. Alright, so enough about the design. You love it, I love it. Let's talk about the actual performance in game, because it isn't just some random car that doesn't really do anything in the game. When it came out, it was really good. It's well over 5,000 rank in S-Class, so it should be pretty good. And yes, it is really fun to drive, but let's talk about the stats and performance. What's really nice about this car is the only obvious weak point is the handling and physics. Other than that, everything else with this car can actually hold its own against many of the other top S-Class cars. Unfortunately, kind of like some of the other S-Class cars we've seen, it just really can't do much against something like the Devil 16 or some of the other cars that can go well over 300 miles per hour. This does get quite close to 300, so again, you're not going to be just left in the dust for most times, but you will actually notice that drop in top speed compared to some of the newer cars. Keep in mind, this is a 5-year-old car when it comes to when it was added to Asphalt. So top speed 292 with Nitro, it's pretty good, nothing insane, but again, when you talk about some of the other S-Class cars like the HTT that were included with this burst of speed, those are just way too slow when it comes to multiplayer performance. Even if they do have good characteristics otherwise, in my opinion, it's just way outclassed by some of the other S-Class cars. Thankfully, because this does get really close to 300, you're not going to be, like I said, left in the dust by many other cars. So in that regard, it's good enough. Now, I would actually say it's above good enough when it comes to acceleration. Nothing insane like some of those crazy electric cars that get close to 90, but at 84.89, this is getting really close to 85 and something that is really usable for multiplayer. My big rule when it comes to acceleration, especially with S-Class, is that you want to be at least over 80, and significantly higher than 80 is best. So when you're at around 85, this isn't too bad. Now, I'm not quite sure where I'm going to end up in terms of epic import parts. Obviously, I'm just going to upgrade this as much as I can. Hopefully, I can get some epic import parts soon for this car. So this is through the free try in the Multiplayer 2 series of multiplayer, and this actually does give it a good look at the performance compared to other S-Class cars, especially ones that are offered during the burst of speed. So I'm not sure how my personal car is going to end up, so this is just talking about performance as it were at Gold Max. So acceleration, it's actually quite decent, especially compared to some of the other S-Class cars that hover just around 80 or just below 80. Handling, unfortunately, is where this car falls a little flat, and not really flat, I would say. It's actually quite bouncy, and you'll notice that in some of the corners, especially when I try to do some floaty drift. Now, in terms of the actual speed in the corners, it's not quite bad. You can maintain well over 200 miles per hour if you hit a floaty drift right, or if you do some good mechanics. However, it comes to the turning radius where you really get disappointed. You're going to see a lot of failed drifts in this video where I end up hitting the opposite side of the wall because I'm expecting a really sharp turn, kind of like the CC850, which is really close in rank to this car, but I always sort of overstep my bounds when it comes to the handling and end up missing the corner. You'll notice that a lot, especially on corners like Shanghai, where you can sort of do a floaty drift in many other cars and hit the corner as close as possible, whereas this one, even though I hit the apex, I end up flying way past where I should and bump into the opposite wall. So that's really the disappointing part of this car, is the really wide handling. Thankfully, this is something where it is a little bit skill based, in that if you can expect the wide handling, you can definitely account for it, and with more practice, I'm sure I can get better at my corners, get better at lining up the car before the corner so that when I go into it, I don't come out of it smacking into a wall. But that is something you have to keep in mind, and it certainly is something that you can compare it to other cars like the CC850, the Esco, that have way sharper handling, and look at it and say, okay, that is a downside to this car. What I will say is something that is really quite refreshing is the Nitro. You get well into the 60s when it comes to performance, and when it comes to top-end S-Class cars, you're looking at the mid-30s, barely reaching 40 or even 50, and sometimes that's not even enough to do double tap Nitro for a full 360. Thankfully, with this car, you don't have to worry about Nitro at all, and when you combine it with the acceleration, if you want to use Shockwave, you can use it to get up to speed really quickly in this car. So again, that's going to make it quite easy to drive when it comes to new players. You just really have to look out for the handling. So overall, in this video, you're going to see a lot of second place finishes. A lot of the times it is down to skill, but other times it is compared to something like a CC850 or something that can go over 300 miles per hour in those top speed oriented tracks where unfortunately this car can't really compete. You can't go over 300 with this car. But in some of the other tracks that are a little more technical and a little more dependent on skill, this car can actually hold its own. And for the past 5 years, I have seen this car in multiplayer time and time again. It seems to be a pretty reliable option. Is this going to be a Devil 16 or a Hennessy Venom? No. Barely going to be able to keep up with the CC850 because it does trade some stats with that car. But this isn't like some of the other throwaway S-Class cars in the middle of the pack where you just simply can't use it in multiplayer because you're going to get outclassed. Thankfully, like I've said throughout this video, this car can definitely hold its own, and not only is the performance actually really good for what you get, it also is just really fun to play with because it also gives you a little bit of lenience on that Nitro. You aren't stuck with that 30 Nitro that other S-Class cars have, which is really refreshing to see. So it does make it not only an easy option to use if you're sort of beginning with those higher end S-Class cars, you want to learn how to use them, but just even as a hardcore player, it's just refreshing to play with a car where you don't have to constantly be monitoring your Nitro gauge. So in conclusion, I got this car purely based on the design and the aesthetic, but at the end of the day, I was also quite impressed with the performance. It's not going to be the best car in my garage anytime soon, but when I run out of fuel on some of the other S-Class cars, I can take this out into the field knowing that it's actually going to hold its own pretty competently against some of the other S-Class cars. Now, I am curious to hear what you guys think about this car. It is 5 years old, and of course, we're going to see a lot more of it, especially with the whole burst of speed thing. So let me know in the comment section, are you going to unlock this car? And if you do, I'm curious to hear your thoughts as to the performance. Anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more Asphalt content, and I will see you guys later.